Hello and welcome back to my channel on everything transpersonal coaching. Today, I wanted to talk with you about why I chose to get into transpersonal and eco psychology and why I chose transpersonal coaching rather than becoming a therapist. So, when I traveled the world for 3 years, I discovered a lot of things. One is that I became the happiest, healthiest, and most spirited and alive version of myself that I've ever been. And I attribute that to having the space and time to truly get to know myself, diving inwards with meditation, breath work, and yoga, and spending most of my time in the natural world, living very simply and in community with other like minds. And that experience gave me an opportunity to see the mind, body, spirit on nature and on spirit. So that experience radically changed my life. And I had previously had therapists and worked on things like minor anxiety, low grade depression, things like that, that I think are just a normal staple of living in modern day society in the US. Our systems are set up in such a way that it's hard for us to really be connected to spirit and be connected to nature and community. So this experience allowed me a new perspective, a new lens on what true optimum health, thriving and flourishing look and feel like. So I wanted to share that experience in an empirical, academic, science-based way, and discovered a field called transpersonal psychology and a field called eco psychology. And I applied for two programs. I applied for a clinical psychology program called Wilderness Therapy. It's a 3-year program. It involves, all the traditional clinical psychology requirements, as well as being in the fields and taking people on adventurous trips and doing therapy while doing things like ropes courses and rock climbing and hikes and things like that. The other program is called Transpersonal Eco Psychology. So it's this blend of both of my interests. It's non-clinical and it addresses not so much neuroses and pathology and deep trauma. It addresses more people who are baseline healthy and ready to move in the direction of flourishing and thriving, like I mentioned in my last video. And that is what I think was that gap between where I was at before I traveled and where I was after those 3 years. And having that experience in between is what gave me the firsthand experience of thriving and flourishing. And transpersonal and eco psychology gave me more so a language than anything else to be able to define the process and a path towards helping others achieve their optimum life. So I was looking also when I came back from my travels to the US, I was absolutely culture shocked. I came back during the Black Lives Matter movement and COVID. And so there were all these riots and violent, looting of businesses and protests in the streets and, more police violence, and then being on lockdown. And, I was just coming from being in the peace of nature, the simplicity of nature and all that it offers and gives humans to make them mentally healthier, happier, and more resilient to, we live in primarily urban societies in the US. So, like universities are mostly in cities too. So I was in the concrete jungle and didn't have my resources, didn't have the same amount of access to peace and connection with the planet um, that I did when I lived more closely with the earth. And I also noticed how people here live very individualist lifestyles, and it's very, people are very guarded. And I was used to, hanging out with friends for sunset every night, like connecting with the rhythms of the earth in that way, like watching the sun go down, bonding through music, playing guitar, singing, dancing. And that was just so much more of the culture traveling and abroad in general, um, in these more tropical places. And here it was like my neighbors did not say hello. Everyone looks down, like no one smiles and makes eye contact. It just felt very cold, and I was really feeling that lack of community that I had so much of living elsewhere. And then I also started meeting a whole bunch of people, and um, people are really struggling here. Like, there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of depression, there's a lot of unhappiness, unfulfillment, not knowing the meaning of their life. And it's concerning, and it's reflected in a lot of the symptoms that we see, like, you know, such violence and police brutality and racism and separation and classism, elitism, sexism, capitalism. Like, it's just not, it's not a fully integrated, awake, and conscious system that we're in by any means, shape, or form. And it's reflected in the quality of our own health, because we're interconnected. We are actually not separate from our environment, our culture, our social influence. And it's our responsibility to wake up as individuals and be more conscious about what we're inputting into our system and how it feels. Does it feel nourishing, or does it feel degrading? Does it feel depleting? Does it feel harmful, hurtful? Like, a lot of the things that we just unconsciously go around absorbing and taking into our minds, our bodies, and our spirits are not good for us. And it's being reflected in the health of, our collective. And this doesn't necessarily mean that, it's only people that develop significant dysfunctions in their thinking and feeling and behaving. To address these things, we all need to address these things. We all have a responsibility to wake up to, how does this land in my body? How does this land in my mind? How does it make me feel as an individual and feel as someone in relationship with others, as a community member, as, the list goes on. And we have the potential to do light years better than what we're creating right now. And a lot of that is based on a certain juncture where we go from unconscious to conscious. And where I like to work with my clients and where I see the need for transpersonal psychology is this moving beyond the ego aspect. The ego is housed in this very primitive reptilian brain. It was like the first evolved part of our brain that adapted to keep us alive and surviving. And so it scans the environment unconsciously for threat. And so we're constantly activating this fight or flight mechanism and scanning for negative things that could harm us in our environment when we're unconscious, and we're just kind of like going about our day, not really paying attention to our thoughts or our environment. And so that keeps us in this like low grade stressed state. And then it that blocks our cognitive faculties from operating at their full potential. We're not as creative, we're not as kind, we're not as open to connection, and this contributes to that overwhelming sense of disconnect that a lot of people in the US and other places in the world too are feeling. And so we can shift, and transpersonal psychology is all about this. Like, how do we wake up into our conscious awareness with mindfulness and cultivate higher qualities of being that help us create more connection, create more harmony, create more love, create more balance in ourselves and our relationships and in the world. And that would be reflected by, once we change, the outside changes and our systems would change in response to that. And it's this ripple effect that I'm really interested in. And so just because we are functioning members of society doesn't mean that we don't have so much room to grow and evolve in our own consciousness and thoughts, feelings, behaviors, our worldview, our perception of reality, the true nature of reality. All of these things are necessary for us to move in a positive, exciting direction for our future. And if we don't want to keep creating what exists right now, we have to change something. And therapy has been good at addressing, you know, the mental illness that can occur or from deep trauma and not getting our needs met and growing up in toxic environments and not having the tools to really help regulate ourselves. And therapy is really great for that. But there's also this other need where we need to take individuals who are baseline healthy right now and move them in the right direction so that we can create a better world and we can have healthier, more fulfilled, happy people and have these connected communities and environments and less separation, conscious of what we're putting out and conscious of what we're taking in. So I chose, and I got into both programs. I went to both intensives, the clinical and non-clinical path. And I had just this overwhelming pull towards the transpersonal eco psychology path because I think it's just what is so needed right now. We need to learn how to be joyful. We need to learn how to create and design lives that give the causes and conditions for joy to exist, for connection to exist. And that means aligning with our soul. And that's this piece that traditional psychology doesn't really bring online. Um, and so that was the part that I'm really interested in because when I was traveling, I was connecting deeply with what made my soul happy and getting to know myself on a level of, being fully aware when I'm trying something new, how it makes my whole being feel. And if it made me feel expansive and energized and open, I followed it. If it made me feel contracted, heavy, dense, anxious, I knew that wasn't for me. And so I want to help people cultivate this relationship to their body, their soul, and their mind, where they're fully integrated and in harmony and designing a life that creates that expansive, open, energized feeling. Um, and, in therapy, once there's no sign of pathology anymore, you're pretty much done. But there's so much more to be done. And that's why it's so important to have a what's next. And I want to be the what's next for when you finish therapy, or even if you aren't in therapy and you don't have a need for it, but you want to fully actualize yourself and your full potential. I'm that person that's providing the next steps of growth and evolution to help you fulfill that fully functioning, integrated, full human experience that and is also living a life and in an environment and in relationship with others that creates fulfillment, peace, growth in a positive direction, harmony, creativity, innovation, seeing the true nature of reality and designing human systems that are in harmony with natural systems. That is the eco-psychology part, which is so crucial. But we can only really get there once our inside is right. So that's another level to the work that I do. And nature is so crucial to mental, physical, and emotional health. It is where our brain evolved over 2 million years in close relationship with the natural world. This had a huge influence on how our brain evolved and our bodies. And so when we are using all of our senses, awakening all of our senses, and we're touching natural things, we're walking barefoot on the earth, we're inhaling the amazing chemicals that plants give off that release serotonin and dopamine in our brain. Also, they increase our white blood cell counts and increase our immunity and resilience. When we feel sunshine on our face and the wind moving through us, we're connected, we feel more whole because we are a part of the earth and we have a huge impact on the quality and health of our planet as well. And so it's this capacity to expand our sense of self beyond this body and be in states of contemplation in nature where we can start to make these connections of, wow, trees, the branches and the roots, when you turn it on its side, look like lungs, and trees are actually creating oxygen for us to breathe. Isn't that amazing? Looking at how oceans provide this biodiversity and ecosystems on coral reefs, like all work together through feedback loops. And when there's an imbalance in the system, say warming water temperatures, they all communicate solutions through the loop and they try them until one stabilizes the balance of that ecosystem. These are incredible, proofs of the consciousness in nature and how important it is for us to realize our interconnection and our dependence on the planet. And when we start to identify with the planet as part of ourselves, we start to take better care of it and keep it as something that matters to us in the forefront of our conscience. And so that changes our thoughts and changes our feelings, which changes our behaviors and our actions that we choose to take, which would make us more conscious consumers, eco-friendly, trying to be have as light of an impact on nature as possible, and maybe contributing more towards its regeneration and doing more selfless things like planting trees or coral gardens and planting seaweed and things like this. So that's a little bit about why I chose this path. It's the more unconventional yet newly emerging and very important field that is fulfilling, in my opinion, the most important need in human life today. Like we are seeing unprecedented species extinctions, for rainforest loss, ocean acidification, and overfishing. It's created disease. Our balance of our system is not as resilient disease is a byproduct of that. It's dis-ease. The planet is suffering, and therefore it's not able to fully heal and regenerate itself. Things like COVID could become a thing of the future. A more, like these extreme weather events are becoming norms, and we're experiencing so much pain and suffering from mental illness being on the rise, and things like, gun violence and shootings are happening at alarming rates that is almost becoming a cultural norm in our American society to be hearing about every week, it seems. So these are symptoms of a bigger root of a problem. And I feel that bringing nature and spirit into our lives helps us take responsibility for our own fulfillment, health, and happiness, our ability to self-regulate, our ability to decide what's healthy for us and what's not, and create lives that are healthy, fulfilling, uplifting, energizing, and knowing how to enjoy life along the way. So, the more people that can get on this path and start being leaders and guides and trailblazers for others, the more others will follow. And just think of the possibilities that we could create coming from having individuals who are flourishing and thriving and influencing the world around us. So I hope that explains why transpersonal psychology and eco-psychology are so crucial, vital, and important to the future that we all want to see. All right, I'll talk with you soon. Have a beautiful day.